April 6th is the anniversary, of course, of the Battle of Thapsus. Yeah, that Thapsus. The one in North Africa, 46 BC, decisive victory by Julius Caesar. So, let's hear it for Cato the Younger. Eh? How did he get in here? Well, the Battle of Thapsus was Caesar's final victory over some of his most determined opponents, including Metellus Scipio, who is a to me, but also Cato the Younger. And he's the guy, it seems to me, that we really ought to remember out of all this. He's the great-grandson of Cato the Elder, and in the dying days of the Roman Republic, he was famous not just for his adherence to Stoic philosophy, but also for his adherence to Republican principles. He was honest, he was incorruptible, and he didn't want a dictator taking over Rome. And somehow for that, he's gotten not so much a historical raspberry as he's just forgotten. Everybody knows Caesar. He may be a figure of fun in Asterix, but we regard him as this sort of gigantic romantic figure who dared, who lived large, who crossed the Rubicon, who challenged convention, and of course got assassinated by his own friends and associates because they thought his ambition was insanely dangerous, as well as being hard to define. I don't even know what it is that Caesar wanted. But I know what Cato wanted. He wanted honesty, he wanted honor, he wanted decency, he wanted to preserve self-government in Rome. And there are all kinds of remarkable stories about Cato. At one point, in order to get him out of Rome so that the party could continue, he was offered the job of being governor of Cyprus and completing its annexation. He said he didn't want it. He thought basically he was being kicked upstairs. But he was ordered by law, so he went. And when he went there, he did two things. First of all, he insisted that Roman government would be mild to the inhabitants and honest. And secondly, he himself refused the numerous opportunities for bribery and extortion, to the point that when he sent back the tax revenue that he'd raised, somehow his account books, which were kept scrupulously, were destroyed. And some people said, oh, he probably stole a bunch of money. Other people said, no, it was Cato. And that was the end of the discussion. They just knew that he wouldn't cheat. So after the Battle of Thapsus, he and Metellus Scipio are defeated. Caesar is triumphant. And Cato decides that he's going to commit suicide because he says Caesar is so illegitimate as a ruler. He has broken the law. He's brought legions into Italy. He's going to make himself a tyrant. I will not even let him pardon me because that would concede him an authority which he does not possess. And so now the Stoics had a different attitude towards suicide than the Christians. It was an honorable thing for them to do. So he stabbed himself, but not fatally. Apparently, his an injured hand, he was having trouble working the sword. People rushed in, determined to save him. They were going to put his innards back where they belong, sew him up, and then he'd either be pardoned or perhaps executed. He was having none of it. In true Stoic fashion, he waved them off, plucked out his bowels, and expired, they say. And I'm sorry it ended that way. It's not exactly how you'd like this story to turn out, but where Caesar got himself assassinated, at least Cato did it on principle. So the question is, why do we have so much more regard for the man who, in winning the Battle of Thapsus, proved himself to be, yes, a great general, also a skillful politician, but an aspiring tyrant whose lust for power wasn't even connected with any discernible program, and so little regard for the man who would rather lose an election than bribe voters, who had such an astonishing reputation for honesty that when the account books disappeared, nobody thought he'd embezzled, who was determined that Roman rule should be mild, who was determined that Rome should be ruled by self-government, who stood up against Caesar, even knowing the risks he was running, and refused to live under the tyrant he failed to prevent from coming to what effectively became the throne under Augustus. It's not Caesar that we should remember, at least it's not Caesar that we should admire. We should remember what happened as a warning about ambition run amok that did overthrow the Republic, which to be sure had a whole lot of problems in its internal structure, but which should be Cato the Younger, even though he didn't win the battle, who we should consider the hero in this whole business, despite what happened to his career back on April 6th, 46 BC. If you're enjoying these commentaries, please go to my website, that's www.johnrobson.ca, and make a pledge so that we can continue to produce them. And of course, keep watching The Rebel, keep subscribing to The Rebel, keep supporting The Rebel for that news and commentary you're just not going to get anywhere else.